Welcome to this channel. Today I'm going to talk about my hottest takes on knitting, and some of them will be probably controversial.
Avocado, ginger tree, I see you.
Let's start with the first one, and this one actually is burning me for quite a while now. It's about blocking, and this one is probably going to be a controversial opinion, but I truly don't understand the obsession with blocking items, and especially buying tools for blocking. Okay, there is exception. If you are making a fine lace, I don't know, Shetland lace shawls, yeah, maybe you need a blocking tools, maybe you need to do lots of blocking. But for most people who are just making sweaters, especially if it's just like basic construction, I don't know, whatever, merino or acrylic sweaters, you don't need to have any blocking tools in your disposal. Also, you don't need to do as much blocking as many people do. Every time I see a picture when something is stretched out on a mat and then some stuff is pinned to keep the stretching position, my head is spinning and I'm like, why, oh why? First of all, okay, I don't know which one is the first of all. Okay, the first one that bugs me that every time you stretch a wet yarn, especially if it's a merino or maybe something even more expensive like mohair, I don't know, cashmere and stuff, you ruining this yarn. Those materials, when wet, they're extremely fragile. You destroy the consistency of the fibers, and this item will be less pleasant, less long lasting, and stuff like this. Second thing, people stretch it out because they feel like it's going to be more even and stuff like this. Again, I can show quickly how I do, washing the garments after I finish knitting them. I just roll them in a towel and then I lay them flat. And of course, if I need to create some shape, if I'm worried it's gonna like squish together, I just nicely lay them flat on a towel and that's it. That's all the blocking you need. And sometimes I understand people do the blocking because the item didn't turn out as intended. Maybe I also did it once or twice when the item was a little bit too long and I wanted to be more wide than long. Okay, sometimes it can be done, but you have to understand that you ruin the fiber every time, and also that you should probably make a proper garment. So instead of making something super tight fitting and then trying to stretch it out so it fits your body, just make things with more positive ease. Next one, it's actually, I guess, comes from here. Every time I go to Ravelry or I just try to see what other people knitted following a particular pattern, my question is why everyone is so obsessed with tight fitting garments. Most of the time those things are not comfortable because they're too tight. They're either tight here or they're tight in the arm. It's much, I don't know, it's harder for you to move around. Also, if the item is very like tight fitting, it's gonna stretch, so it's not gonna, if you have like a certain pattern, it's not gonna look as good. I don't know, it doesn't look good on people. I just don't understand why everyone is so obsessed with tight fitting garments. I understand it's probably the preference of choice of like style choices, but it's just something I don't know, I just can't. Like tight fitting garments, I don't know, is it worse than blocking? Probably. Next one. Okay, this one will be extremely controversial. I truly don't understand why so many people are obsessed with knitting PetiteKnit. I like, okay, so to be clear, does she have a decent designs? Yes. Does she have a, good knitting skill? But actually recently somebody told me it is actually not her who is knitting for those designs, that she has a team of people helping her. I don't know, correct me if it's wrong. So then I don't know whom are we judging. But anyway, like when I look at her garments, are they decent garments? Yes. But I don't understand why she is the number one designer that everyone needs. Like the other day, I went to Ravelry just to see what's on the top pages, and every page, in the bestsellers or like hot items, would have at least 5 designs of PetiteKnit, and I'm like, what's happening? So here is my actually reasons why I personally don't buy PetiteKnit patterns. I don't like it. I'm never gonna intend to buy it, and let me elaborate. So first one, little history. So when I started knitting like 4 or 5 years ago, I actually followed the same train. I bought, I think, 2 or 3 patterns from her. 2 patterns were the vest. I think it was a slipover vest, and then some like a V-neck vest or like other vest. of a cardigan or like September pullover, something like this. When I started making a vest, I followed the instruction, like what, based on my circumference of my bust, what size should I need. When I started knitting it, I don't know, that thing was a disaster. The neck was too tight. Everything was like tight fitting in that particular design. And I don't know, it's just like, it was just not comfortable thing. Like the neckline was not super comfortable and stuff like this. I don't like how they're structured. Like for a beginner, as I was, I couldn't understand anything. I think that's why I didn't need the sweater, because I just couldn't understand. It was like too complicated. But at the same time, she has lots of basic patterns. So if somebody is like more advanced, I don't understand why people just don't figure out how to make their own garments, because most of the items that she needs are very basic. You can just do it yourself. And second, I don't think she has the best construction. I think, actually, let's put it this way. So when somebody creates a design, it can be like sewing, it can be knitting. If your body looks exactly like the body of that person, more likely you're going to have a good fit. Especially if you follow like the same style like them, if you wear the clothes with the same ease, if you're like, and by having the same body, I don't mean just the size, but just in general. For example, somebody who is like in general very slim, have a narrow neck, like very like a thin like arms, like legs and stuff like this, has a particular height. I don't know, maybe has like a very straight back, maybe has a certain like slope of shoulders, maybe have like more straight shoulders and stuff like this. So like all these like little things, even like the proportions between like, let's say like your bust versus your arm versus your underbust. So if this thing, the designer fits your, like your body, you're probably gonna have good experience. But with me particularly, I tried several designs for PetiteKnit. Every time the neckline was too tight, I had to redo it. Every time I think I had to increase the armhole opening, because everything was too, like, it was just too tight fitting. And just in general, I think every time like I heard like some of my friends knitting PetiteKnit, or I saw some people on YouTube, people always do alterations. And obviously it makes sense that sometimes people do alterations. I do alterations to patterns all the time. But for me, if I have to buy a pattern and then I have to change the garment construction, I'm not going to pay for this. So also like just the fact that her patterns, at least back in the day, they didn't have any, I don't know, like maybe now it's better, but I remember when I was buying her pattern, it has no schematics. It had no pictures, no, like if it's a particular, like it was really hard to work with this pattern, and I just don't understand why people are so upset. I don't know. Is it because everyone likes the Scandinavian design? Is it because she's very, I don't know, inspirational in terms how she like dresses simply but looks good? I just don't understand. Like for me, I just don't understand why people go crazy for PetiteKnit. She doesn't have such a good pattern descriptions. Her garment construction probably fits people with the same body. I don't know, to be honest. Like, I'm sure like this is very controversial. Many people will say like, oh, we need beautiful items. I don't know. There is something about me that I don't understand why people are obsessed with her, like literally. And the next thing that I don't like about PetiteKnit, which is not just her, but I think many other pattern designers actually followed this trend from her, that people add a mohair, like a strand of mohair to their merino. Again, like, I don't know, maybe it was not her who started it first. Maybe it's like something traditional for a certain region. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole idea that people just need so many things and they constantly add mohair to their merino, this is something I don't get. And here is why. First of all, mohair is it's a very specific yarn. First of all, if you buy like a high quality mohair, it has to be kid mohair with silk, because the mohair can't exist on its own. It has to be like, how to say, winded on something. So usually it's either like some synthetic thread that the mohair sits on, or it's a silk. Silk is better, but silk is expensive. Kid mohair is extremely expensive. And then like regular mohair is very itchy. Kid mohair is less itchy because it's like better premium, more high quality yarn. So, but anyway, either way, if you buy high quality like kid mohair silk, it's extremely expensive. Okay, no, please don't go on in my tea. If you add mohair, first of all, you make your garment more expensive. Second, it makes it warmer and itchier. So lots of people actually have sensitivity. I personally I don't really work with my hair much because I actually recently I can't even wear wool around my neck, so I have to use like synthetic yarns or something that's not itchy, or something that doesn't come as close to my neck. So you add mohair, you make your item itchy. Some people probably don't even understand that they make the item itchy. Some people, I heard them saying like, oh, I made this garment, it's like so itchy, I don't really wear it as much. Plus the way how this itchiness works, if it's too hot, so let's say you're in a room in this sweater and you're too hot, you're going to be more itchy. If you go outside, like let's say if you wear this sweater, like I don't know, to take a walk in a very cold day, you're going to be less itchy. So lots of times I heard people like, oh yeah, I made this item, but I don't really wear it too much because it just get too hot in it. Yes, because you added mohair. Mohair is one of the hottest yarns. If you use like a cheaper versions of mohair, like yeah, you can make the garment not as expensive, but still you're adding a yarn. Like for me, if you want a certain look, for example, like this one is like a brushed look, you're probably better off just buying a yarn that's already has a brushed look, like something like it's that's exists like in a lace, or not a lace, like in a chain, or like some air yarns, some like puffed yarns, brushed yarns and stuff like this. You're probably gonna get a better price. But again, not everyone concerned with the price. But just the whole idea that people add mohair everywhere, it just, I don't know, it's just weird. I did a couple of projects following the same approach. I remember like again in the very beginning when I was trying my knitting, and I started with PetiteKnit like everyone else. So like for example, I had a gray something like bamboo yarn, and then I added a strain of very thin and both of the yarns were thrifted, that's why they were mismatched in terms of color. So I had a gray bamboo cotton something yarn, and I had a like a bright yellow, like very thin mohair wool something mix, and I put them together, and that item actually looked really good, because this way I changed the the property of the yarn. So if I would just knit something made out of bamboo, that item definitely would not be very warm in winter. But adding a thin strand of mohair, I made this item warmer. So I increased, the certain property, the warmness. Also, it made it much softer, because that bamboo was kind of like a little bit, I don't know, maybe it was not bamboo, maybe it was something else, but it was not very, it was kind of rough to the touch. Maybe it was bread silk or something like that. And then also because I matched two different yarns, one was like a regular, like probably DK weight, another one was like lace weight. So I didn't increase the thickness of the yarn, but at the same time I made it look really nice, this contrast of like yellow and gray. So when people do something like this to, change the property of the yarn, or I don't know, create a certain look, I understand when people use mohair. But just the whole idea that you buy like a blue merino and then blue mohair and put it together and just wear it like this, I just don't get it. It's just such a weird idea. I just don't get it. And here we actually come to my next hot take. I don't understand when people mix yarns of different property or of different like premiumness, I don't know if you can say like this, or different price. I mean, sometimes when you understand what are these yarns about and you mix it, like, so you make this on purpose, that's okay, or you're trying to use up your stash, that's okay, or it's like something you just couldn't find in different yarns, it's okay. But just in general, like I see people sometimes, they take like let's say they have a cake of I don't know, like cashmere merino yarn, and then they mix it with some cheap wool that's like super itchy, and then they add something else to that. And again, if you understand, for example, if I take a, I don't know, like a regular wool, and maybe I have a very thin like a fingering lace type of like a fine, I don't know, extra fine merino, or like some cashmere or something like this, and I put them together, yeah, it's gonna make the whole item a little bit softer. But at the same time, like, why? You just, again, you increase the the budget, you just waste good yarn on something where you're not gonna really feel it most of the time. If it's like, I don't know, it just, or sometimes I even saw like people mixing like merino, cashmere, and acrylic. And I'm like, acrylic yarn. I'm like, why? Please don't do it. Again, that's not my business to tell people what to do with their life and their money, but they just don't get it. So every time you mix, actually, if you are into mixing yarns, you're very like, you know, you like to put things together because you're a creative person. That's good. I wish I was you. I'm trying to develop that part of me, but at least try to spend some time to understand the fibers, understand the difference between, like, I don't know, different properties, you know, like, okay, this yarn gonna make it much warmer. Like, for example, adding more hair, you're gonna make your sweater warmer. Or like, let's say if, I don't like my, like, I always like tend to run hot, so I don't want my items to be too hot. Then maybe like every time I use merino, I mix it with some cotton to make it like a little bit less warm, the item. Or like, oh, I add this type of, like, let's say I add viscose because I don't want my item to be too hot, plus I want it to be more like flowy and stuff like this. So it's cool when people mix yarns, understanding what are they trying to achieve this way. Or, as I said, if you're just using up your stash, that's okay. But just when you go to the store, you spend money and you buy cashmere and then mix it with, I don't know, some like very cheap wool, I just don't get it. Don't do it. Next one will be, I think every of my takes is super controversial. Let's talk about hand-dyed yarn. I do not like hand-dyed yarn and I don't knit with it. Just in general, I don't get the hype. Again, before people start screaming at me and canceling or blocking me or unsubscribing or whatever. So you have to understand that I come from a different cultural background. In my cultural background, hand-dyed yarn didn't exist until like maybe in the last couple of years. So maybe because I didn't learn knitting in this cultural background, like I didn't learn it in America. So I'm just not, it's not something that was always there. So it was something that was kind of like foreign to me, and that's why I still don't get it. And when I look at many sides of this, I'm like, I still don't get it. Okay, so I did try to knit, I think, a couple of times with, or maybe one or twice, with hand-dyed yarn. But the reasons why I don't knit with the hand-dyed yarn, first of all, it's expensive, and I understand we want to support small businesses and stuff like this. Like, I'm a small business myself, so obviously I also want people to support me, but at the same time it's just expensive, and I just can't, most of the time I just can't justify the price for myself, because hand-dyed yarn, it looks very beautiful in a cake or in a in a hank. That's why a couple of times I bought it, because I was like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. But every time I try to knit with it, it becomes like something just like very like kind of like spotty, not sparkly, spotty, stripy. And to me, it just looks ugly. I'm sorry, you can unsubscribe from me, but hand-dyed yarn 99% of times is ugly as F. And just for the price, I'm like, I just don't understand what I'm paying for. Again, I have a particular preference in terms of colors, design, stuff. I just don't get. I just don't get it. I don't know. Too expensive and looks very, I don't know. And another reason why I don't like hand-dyed yarn, even if I like that like a kind of like spotty effect, you can never predict what it's gonna be. I remember I bought this particular like I think it was okay, I'm not gonna name the brands because it's not good for me to talk about particular brands in this in this video, because this video is like a little bit critical, so I don't want to add any brands in it. So there is this particular brand. I bought a hand-dyed yarn from them and it looked so beautiful, and it was like more like a gradient colors, and the way how it looked in a hang, I had I don't know, for some reason I had the idea that it's going to be something like a blue, teal, greenish colors, and I like those colors. When I started knitting, it turned out it has more grayish and purple and brownish, like parts of the gradient, than the blue. The blue and greenish was like a small part, and the rest was like, and I don't know, maybe I'm dumb enough, maybe like people who hand knit a lot with the hand-dyed yarn, they already look at the hank and they're like, oh, I know exactly how it's gonna look. But just the whole unpredictability annoys the crap out of me, and I'm like, okay. And even when it's like a solid color, it's still kind of, I don't know, it looks like it's something just when you knit with it, it just looks like it's like, I don't know, it just lost its color. I'm sorry, if you're a hand dyer and you hate me right now, you have all the rights to do it. It just, I'm not saying people should not use it. I just don't understand why people use it, because I just don't find it very appealing. I'm sorry. Okay, next one. Everyone who starts a YouTube channel or like, I don't know, like any social media about knitting eventually ends up creating a pattern. And my hot take is that, I'm sorry, you don't need to monetize your hobby. You don't need to create a pattern. You don't need to sell those patterns. Especially like, yeah, if people just do like a free pattern, like let's say they create a design, they, I don't know, write on their blog or make a tutorial on YouTube or just explain how they do the process. Yes, share your knowledge. I don't know, tell people, like share your ideas. But the whole idea that everyone tries to, like monetize their hobby, like again, somebody's gonna say like, oh, in this economy, people just trying to do whatever. But I just feel like, I don't know, I don't think people do it because actually I actually feel that people do it for like wrong reasons sometimes, because they just started knitting something, they're like, oh, I can make a pattern, and then they make a pattern of a, I don't know, like a very basic pullover or like a basic scarf or something like this. And again, who am I to tell people what to do? But the reason why I don't think everyone should be creating patterns, for several reasons. First of all, there are many patterns that are written in a very like sloppy, crappy way. So if you're creating a pattern design, or you write a pattern, if you decide to go in this area and you decide to charge, make sure you understand the garment construction. Make sure you understand, like, I don't know, like how to like write things. Make sure you find somebody who can proofread and edit your stuff. Make sure you have people who can actually make sure your math works, because when people sell a pattern that has mistakes, I don't know, to be honest. Or when somebody makes a pattern and you look at people who created project based on this pattern, and you see consistently like mistakes in the design. I remember actually once I bought a kit. Again, it was like the first couple of months when I started knitting. I was like so super confused where to start, so I just bought a kit. I bought yarn, they sent me needles and sent me the design, and that design was like so crappy. I remember first of all there was something wrong with the sleeves, because I don't have very thick arms, even like for my size, just have regular arms. When I tried to knit those sleeves, because they were knitted flat and then you had to stitch them together, they would just not like, I just couldn't put like, and I checked this pattern many times. I looked at it again and again. I did like calculations. I redid the calculation many times. Something was wrong. So it was just too tight. So I had to change it. And I'm like, okay, seriously, you sell your kit for such a huge amount of money. Obviously, you overcharge. And then you can't even make a pattern that doesn't have mistakes. Like, seriously, what's going on? And I'm not even talking about people like, okay, if you create like a, like a sweater or any like a large garment, understand how the, like a shoulder drop works. Understand how the neckline works. If you do your pattern without a, like a back neck, what's the term in English? Anyway, so if you don't have this like, neck scoop, if you don't have this thing, then you don't know how to do garments. At least maybe in this case, don't charge for your patterns, maybe charge a little bit less, because when people charge like a crazy amount of money for the pattern that's poorly written, has mistakes, doesn't even like follow any like basic garment construction like principles, like I just don't understand it. And my last pet peeve is like so many people create patterns for basic construction, which I don't understand. I understand when people try to do something creative, like maybe implement some technique. So, for me, like every time I buy a pattern, I want to learn something new. Maybe a new, like, I don't know, like stitch pattern. Maybe a new, garment construction, like trick. Maybe like, let's say I buy something like I never did this particular, let's say I'm doing my first color work, or I'm doing my first like intarsia or something. At least I learned something. But if it's like a very basic, like a stockinette stitch sweater, and then people charge like $10 for it, I just don't get it, seriously. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm thinking like maybe also because I come from the culture where in my culture people do like patterns with video instructions, with photos, with like super explanations about every step. And maybe when you pay for this pattern, even when it's like a very basic garment, you at least understand you're paying basically for somebody to teach you how to do it, and you don't need to go elsewhere. You're going to understand everything from this pattern. Again, it's a market, so I guess people just create whatever, and people, if it's not good enough, people just not gonna buy it. But at the same time, there are some designers, people consistently, and I don't mean PetiteKnit right now, so don't get me wrong. There are other designs, for example, I don't know, I don't know if I should, actually, okay, let me name it. For example, there is this wave sweater that I actually wanted to make, but then every person, and I heard from like multiple people who need this wave sweater, they were all complaining about the garment construction. And I just don't understand, because look, if somebody is, okay, maybe if it's your first pattern, yeah, maybe you're allowed to have mistakes, not understand how to do it. But if you already started making some money from your, from you selling patterns, use this money to hire a proofreader. So maybe you don't know this, but let me tell you something. So if you decide to sell a pattern, you can, first of all, you can find a person who's going to proofread it. You can find testers. You can pay. There are websites where you can find testers. If nobody wants to test for you, you can actually pay people. So you can hire people who are going to test it for you. And you also can hire a person who can do the math. So this person is not going to look at your design skills, but going to look at your math and going to like give you feedback whether your, math makes sense, that your, like your pattern doesn't have mistakes, that everything is logical and stuff like this. These people can be hired. Obviously, is it extra expense? Yes, it is. Maybe for your first pattern, if you're like broke and you don't have extra money, you don't consider it as a business, yeah, okay, don't do it. But if you're selling like already third, fourth, fifth pattern, and you still didn't learn how to do garment construction, and you don't hire people who are gonna help you with that side of the job, then I'm sorry. My hot take is that you're not allowed to sell patterns. Just please don't create more poorly written patterns. People pay money. And just in general, I don't know, back in the day, people could buy a book or a magazine, and it would have several patterns in one magazine. But now you pay $10 for just one pattern, and sometimes it's so crappy you can't even use it. My next take is also a grievance about pattern designs. You know what I hate about some patterns? So look at me, I'm a person who likes to wear things that are very like loosely fitted. Sometimes I like to wear oversized. So I like things to be not tight fitting. So if I decide to knit a pattern, what I usually do, I'm gonna look at the photo of, of the author, of the designer. And the designer, like let's say the designer has kind of similar size to me. And I'm like, oh, cool, okay, let me see. Oh yeah, they look cute in their sweater. And then I look in their, like at the pattern, and the pattern would say, oh, if you have a bust, like my bust is like, for example, 86 centimeters, you should like knit a size small. And I'm like, okay, since I already saw how the author of the pattern looks like, I saw that the person has like presumably the same size as me, and this is how the item fits on them. So if I knit size S, I'm gonna get the same look. And then I knit the pattern, and it's like tight fitting like this, because what I learned much later in my knitting journey, that some designers would create, grading. They would have size extra small, blah, blah, blah. That's another pet peeve of mine, using this small and medium and other names, but that's another story. Okay, so the, designer would create certain sizes, and then they're gonna, give you recommendation what size you would need, but they themselves don't follow this recommendation. So they themselves, like for example, with the size they have, they're supposed to wear size S, but they instead gonna need size large or size medium and wear that size because they like things to be more loose fitting. But never at their pattern, they're gonna disclose, what is their size, what the size of the garment they're wearing, stuff like this. And of course, there are exceptions to that. There are designers who, they're very transparent. They tell you what size they wear. I remember I bought a pattern from Jacqueline Gislac, or I hope I'm not butchering her name. She had the whole, I think the last pages of the pattern, or maybe it was a separate file where you can see all the testers who knitted that item, and you could see all the measurements. So you would know, okay, this particular tester has this size, and they knitted this size of the pattern. So you can get ideas like, okay, this lady, she has this, like bust circumference, but she knitted size 3. Okay, it looks loose on her. So I guess if I knit it, it's going to loose on me. So, the designer actually provides this information. And this is awesome. This is how it's supposed to be done. If you're making money off patterns, do your job. Be transparent, tell everyone what size are you wearing, and don't do this recommended sizing if you're not following it yourself. It's just so annoying. Unfortunately, this mistake I saw more often than not with other designers. Of course, you can tell me like, oh, Stella, you can go on Ravelry and look at projects and stuff like this. You know what? If I pay money for your pattern, it's not my job to go to Ravelry and do some investigation and try to figure out, oh, I wonder what size is this person knitting? Oh, I wonder if this person has the same tension and gauge or not. It's not my job to do it. You have to be very transparent with these things, especially if you're charging money for the pattern. And I guess that's going to be my last pet peeve. Probably not last video on hot dates, but this is last peeve for now. Pet peeve of mine is why nobody learns how to knit items. People follow patterns for basic designs. And I understand. Sometimes like I have friends who tell me like, okay, I have a stressful job. I just don't want to be sitting there and figuring out how to, how to do like neck opening or how to do armhole opening. But I promise you, self-drafting sweaters or just understanding the basics is not that difficult. It may be difficult for some people, but for most people, it's not that difficult. Obviously, you need to spend some time to figure it out, but it's not that difficult. And especially like some of my friends who tell me like, oh, we don't want to figure this out. But then at the same time, every time they need something following the pattern, they tell me like, oh, I hate this neck. I wish I could fix the neck. Oh, I don't like the, like for example, if the shoulder drop is not correct, so let's say there is a garment that has a very little shoulder drop or no shoulder drop, you're gonna have lots of things bunching up here because this fabric needs to go somewhere, so it's just gonna go here. So I have people complaining about this. So for me, that's another actually pet peeve about crappy garments, and not garments, crappy patterns. Sometimes you open the pattern and there is no schematic. So I don't understand what is the intended neck opening, what's the intended shoulder drop. Because if I look at it and if I see your shoulder drop is for oversized sweater is only like 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, 1 inch, I'm like, okay, something wrong with this sweater, unless it's a very stretchy yarn. It's not that difficult to understand how to do it, and at least if you buy that crappy pattern, at least you can change things. Also, you don't need to buy patterns. I often see people buy patterns for like very basic items, like basic pullovers, basic vests. You don't need it. It's easy. And the reason why you want to learn how to draft things, because you can use any yarn. You don't need to go and buy expensive, I don't know, knitting for olive or I don't know, something, sadness garn, Mohair, blah, blah, blah. That might be too expensive where you live. You can buy any yarn and then you make your own swatch. You know your measurements. You just do a little math. It's very simple. And you can use any yarn, You can actually even use a pattern and easily redo this. Like, for example, for me, when I make a sweater, I just look at the basic idea in the pattern and then things like neck opening, armhole opening, like back neck drop, because I usually do a little bit larger back neck drop because I am very, I'm very slouched. So if you're slouched, your back has to be longer. So, because I know that my body needs a particular alterations. So I know how to do it. That's why also if you have a larger bust, and you struggle with all the sweaters like riding up and then they like, kind of exposing your belly, because the length of your sweater needs to be either longer because, the fabric needs to go around your bust, or ideally you need to learn how to darts. Because more often than not, I see people wearing very tight fitting items because they follow the pattern design. And let's say their under bust is let's say like your medium in under bust, but then you have a large, I don't know, D cup, large, large size bust. Of course, the sweater going to be very tight on you because, that volume has to be, considerate when you knit. So either you have to do a longer sweater or you have to do a wider sweater, or you have to do darts. And again, if you know how to do it, you don't need to rely on the pattern. You just add those little alterations while you're going. The same, like more like sloped shoulders, you need a bigger shoulder drop. If you're very slouched, as I said, or let's say if you have a particular body type, let's say you're like a athlete and you have very like large neck and you have lots of muscles in this area, your back is and let's say you don't have a large chest, you need a longer back. And again, you probably need depends on the design of the item, but you probably need a bigger like opening, back neck opening. You might need to elongate the armhole opening. So let's say on the front, your armhole opening will be slightly shorter than in the back. Again, when you hear this, don't go and just implement this without understanding why and in what situation. But again, if you learn the basic garment construction, and that's, I guess, another pet peeve of mine, I wish more people would just share this experience, and I hope I will share this experience on this channel. That's why I actually created this channel, because I was like, you know what, I want more people to subscribe to me so I can actually share my knowledge. I have way too much knowledge and I don't know where to go with it. That's why I created this hot takes video. I was like, I hope this video gonna attract people to me, and I hope this video these people will not be scared by me having way too controversial opinions about things. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me a thumb down. Sign up subscribe, and see you in my next video. Thank you. Bye bye.
The little guy never misses a trick. Dead ladybirds gathering dust. Tiny shells, seashell lost. Monopoly, car hat shoe. Wicked lady and a soft one too.